Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we'll discuss the topic of ischemic bowel disease. Before we enter the topic of ischemic bowel disease, we'll look at the basic anatomy of a celiac artery and superior mesenteric artery, right? Starting with the celiac artery. So, this is a DSA run of the celiac artery. And celiac artery has three main branches, that is the common hepatic artery, the left gastric artery, and the splenic artery. So we know that splenic artery and left gastric artery do not give too many branches. Now, going in depth about the common hepatic artery gives gastroduodenal artery, which goes along the head and the uncinate process of the pancreas, and then it gives a proper hepatic artery proper. This proper hepatic artery divides into a right hepatic artery and a left hepatic artery. Now, important thing to note is that the gastroduodenal artery gives superior pancreatic artery. Why is the superior pancreatic artery important? I'll let you guys know in few minutes. Now, moving to the DSA run of superior mesenteric artery. Superior mesenteric artery, the most commonly asked question is, what is the first branch of superior mesenteric artery? The first branch is inferior pancreatico-duodenal artery. Most of the times it is not visible on a DSA run. So, on a DSA run, what can you see? On the right side, we have three branches. That is, the first branch is middle colic artery. The next one is a common trunk of the right colic artery and the ileocolic artery. So this is the right colic artery. This is the ileocolic artery, this one. And then this ileocolic artery gives off a branch that is appendiceal artery. And the third one is a continuation of the superior mesenteric artery itself. And towards the left side, we have two branches, that is, we have jejunal as well as ileal branches. Now that we understood the anatomy of celiac as well as superior mesenteric artery, I'll just brief you about inferior mesenteric artery. Inferior mesenteric artery majorly has three branches. That is, what is left? We already have the middle colic. So what is left is the left colic. So it gives off the left colic, which is followed by sigmoid. So we have a sigmoidal artery, and then you have superior rectal artery. The next question which people would ask is this: where is the inferior and middle rectal artery coming from? It comes from internal iliac artery. This is important, guys, because there's an anastomosis which is happening over the rectum between superior, middle, and inferior rectal arteries. Now, we are done with the anatomy. We'll start with the topic, that is ischemic bowel disease. Yeah. So, what do we mean by ischemic bowel disease? Ischemia means any organ when it is deprived of oxygen, we call it ischemia. So, ischemic bowel disease is when there is the bowel which is deprived of oxygen, we call it as an ischemic bowel disease. You can have ischemia of the small bowel, which is called as mesenteric ischemia, or you can have the ischemia of the large bowel, which is ischemic colitis. So we have mesenteric ischemia and ischemic colitis, right? Now, we'll discuss in detail about mesenteric ischemia today. Mesenteric ischemia, it can be acute or chronic. First, we'll discuss about acute. We'll come back to chronic later. Acute mesenteric ischemia, it can occur in three forms. It can be an arterial ischemia, it can be a venous ischemia, or it can be NOMI. What is NOMI? That is non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. So in exams, if someone wants to test you, they'll usually give NOMI, that is non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, to test your knowledge. Now we'll look at the etiology, pathogenesis, its imaging features, and how do we treat each of this in a tabular format so that we understand it clearly, the differences between all three conditions, right? Among all three conditions, which is most common? Arterial. Arterial occurs in 70% of the cases, whereas venous in 20% and NOMI in another 20% of the cases. Among the arterial variant, which is the most common artery to be involved? It is superior mesenteric artery. The superior mesenteric artery overall is the most common artery involved causing ischemic bowel disease. So, starting with the arterial, etiology of an arterial, like any other place, here also it is either a thrombus formation or an emboli. In an artery, embolus is more common. If you're seeing an embolus in an artery, where is it coming from? Like any other arterial ischemia. Here also it can be coming from a left arterial thrombus, left atrial thrombus, or a mycotic aneurysm which is dislodging the emboli, or presence of an aortic dissection or an aortic aneurysm which can act as a foci or source of an embolus. Moving forwards to the venous thrombus, if you're seeing, most commonly the cause is any hypercoagulable state. What do you mean by a hypercoagulable state? When do you see these conditions? Examples, it can be post-surgical immobilization states, patient is on OC pills, patient is a postpartum pregnancy patient, few tumors are, hypercoagulable conditions like stomach cancer, lung cancers, few congenital disorders like factor S, factor C deficiency, etc. There are a lot of conditions which are hypercoagulable states, and these are few of them. Moving forward to our important topic, that is NOMI, that is non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. The name itself suggests that it is non-occlusive, which means there is no thrombus either in the artery or in the vein, right? So then how is it that you are getting still an ischemia of the bowel without any thrombus? The reason is hypoperfusion. Any patient in shock, it could be septic shock, it could be vasovagal attack, any form of shock a patient is experiencing, in these conditions, what our body does is, based on physiology, all the blood is transferred to the brain and the heart, right? So there is decreased blood flow to the bowel. Because of this decreased blood flow, you see something called as non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. We'll look at the pathogenesis in detail in next few minutes, right? So if it is because of a non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, you will see that it involves first the watershed zones. It is self-understood because it's hypoperfusion, it should involve the watershed zones. Which are the watershed zones in a bowel? Now we look at that. We know that superior mesenteric artery gives off middle colic artery. Inferior mesenteric artery gives off the left colic artery. So there is this area of the large colon, that is splenic flexure, which is the junction between the SMA and the IMA, that is superior mesenteric artery, and the inferior mesenteric artery, which is named as Griffith point. So if you are looking at bowel ischemia involving the Griffith point, you should think of a non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. What are the other watershed areas which it can involve? Is Sudeck's point. What is Sudeck's point? Sudeck's point is a junction between a sigmoid artery and superior rectal artery. Both are branches of inferior mesenteric artery itself, right? Then other things are ileal as well as jugular loop sometimes can show the features of non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. Now that we understood the etiology, we'll move forward to the pathogenesis, right? Starting with the pathogenesis of arterial thrombus. If there is an arterial thrombus, most commonly involving the superior mesenteric artery, there is acute cutoff of the blood supply to the bowel loops, because of which they'll go into necrosis, gangrene, and perforation, right? Now, if there is occlusion of superior mesenteric vein or any vein for that matter, there will be accumulation of the blood in the venules and the capillaries, which will lead to an increase in the hydrostatic pressure. Increase in the hydrostatic pressure will lead to leakage of the blood, leakage of the fluid from the blood vessel into the surrounding tissue, right? Because of this, you will have a associated bowel wall thickening as well as ascites. Along with all this, you know that once there is ischemia, there is accumulation of toxins which is occurring. You will have a hypoxia associated with this. Because of all this, you will have ischemia of the nerve plexus which is sitting in the bowel wall. Because of this, what happens is you will see associated bowel dilatation. So, why are you getting bowel wall thickening? Is because of increase in hydrostatic pressure and there's an edematous bowel wall thickening and ascites. Why are you getting a bowel dilatation in any of the ischemia? Is because of the damage of the nerve plexus which are sitting in mesenteric as well as myenteric nerve plexus which are in the bowel, right? Now, we look at the pathogenesis of NOMI, that is non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. We already know patient is in hypoperfusion state, patient is in shock, because of which there is decreased blood flow to the bowel, blood is redirected to the heart and the brain. So because of which the bowel will experience a reversible bowel injury. Once it experiences this reversible bowel injury, there will be accumulation of toxins. Whenever there is an accumulation of toxins, by reflex mechanism, you will see vasodilation with increased vascular permeability. because of which you know that you will see that there is a bowel wall thickening, edematous bowel wall thickening. Now that we understood the pathogenesis, we look at the clinical features. Clinical features will mimic any intestinal obstruction. This will also come with the same features, that is abdominal pain, distension, vomiting, constipation. Right. So, what makes the difference between an ischemic bowel disease and any other obstruction? It is that the abdominal pain will be out of proportion to the amount of abdominal distension the patient is experiencing, right? So the pain is the predominant feature in ischemic bowel disease. Now, we'll go to the imaging next. Before we look at the imaging features, we'll look at three case scenarios of an arterial thrombus, venous, as well as NOMI, non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, and then we'll understand the imaging features. So, this is a first case scenario where you can see there are small bowel loops which are dilated with paper thin bowel wall, right? And these bowel loops are filled with air. So ideally you're not supposed to see air in the small bowel loops, right? So you are seeing a paper thin bowel wall with a prominent to mildly dilated small bowel loops which are filled with air. This is the first case scenario. Now we come to the second case scenario where you can see that there is a filling defect which is non-enhancing in nature and distending the superior mesenteric vein. And in the next image, we can see that there is edematous bowel wall thickening. Along with it, there is mesenteric haziness and ascites. This is a second case scenario. Coming to the third case scenario. Third case scenario, you can see that the IVC is collapsed, the anterior posterior diameter of the aorta is reduced, there is hyperenhancing renal cortex, there is hyperenhancing adrenals, hyperenhancing pancreas, and enhancing mucosa of the gallbladder. Along with it, you can see few dilated bowel loops. So, now that we've looked at the three case scenarios, by now I guess you guys would have understood that the first case scenario is an SMA thrombus, second case scenario is that of an SMV thrombosis, third case scenario is non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. Now we look at the differences between all three cases, right? Starting with the first imaging feature, which is most important difference, that is bowel wall thickening. Bowel wall thickening, we've already seen in our example that arterial will show paper thin bowel wall, whereas venous and NOMI will have thickened bowel loops. NOMI sometimes can have a normal to even thin bowel wall, right? Then bowel dilatation. Bowel dilatation, I've already showed you in the pathogenesis also that it is a predominant feature of a venous ischemia. However, it occurs both in arterial as well as non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia slightly in a later stage. Coming to the next thing, that is bowel wall enhancement. Bowel wall enhancement we've already seen in an arterial thrombus, it is hypoenhancing, whereas in venous as well as non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, it is hyper. However, once that also goes into necrosis and gangrene, it will become hypoenhancing in nature. Coming to the other associated findings, obviously if it's an arterial thrombus, you'll see a filling defect in the superior mesenteric artery. If it's a venous venous thrombus, you'll see a thrombus or a filling defect which is non-enhancing in nature in the superior mesenteric vein. However, if it is a non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, as I've just discussed with our example, you will see hyperenhancement of few structures and hypoenhancement of few structures. Hyperenhancement of structures include adrenal gland, the kidney, the gallbladder mucosa, pancreas, hypoenhancement of liver as well as the spleen, and the most important is the anterior posterior diameter of the aorta should be less than 13 mm and anterior posterior diameter of the IVC should be less than 9 mm. It is very important before you call it a non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, you see these associated findings and then only you can tag the name of non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, right? Now, what are the complications, right? We already looked at the pathogenesis that if it is an arterial, it will go into necrosis, perforation. So the risk of perforation is highest with an arterial thrombus or an emboli. Coming to the most important complication, that is pneumatosis intestinalis with a portal venous gas. First, we'll look at an example and then we'll look at the differences among the three sections. So, what do we mean by pneumatosis intestinalis? Pneumatosis intestinalis is presence of gas or air in the bowel wall. So, we can see in this example also that you can see there are few air foci along the wall of the bowel, right? Now, the next question which arises in our head is, how do we know if this air is free air which is present in the bowel, which I mean inside the bowel loop, or is it present in the wall of the bowel, right? So, if you're seeing an air foci which you are suspicious that it could be pneumatosis intestinalis, and if it is present along the posterior wall of the bowel, then when you take a section or when you take a CT scan in a supine position, the air is supposed to be accumulated on the top, right? But still you're seeing along the posterior wall, it has to be pneumatosis intestinalis. But however, if you're seeing air foci along the anterior wall and you're suspicious that it could be pneumatosis intestinalis, change the position of the patient to prone. If the air foci rises, then it is not pneumatosis intestinalis. If it is the same location, then most likely you are dealing with a pneumatosis intestinalis. Now, before we go to portal venous gas, we'll know about what is enterohepatic circulation. Enterohepatic circulation basically means that from the aorta to celiac superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery, from there the blood supplies the bowel. From the bowel via the enterohepatic circulation, it goes to the superior mesenteric vein, inferior mesenteric vein, this splenic vein back to portal vein to liver, liver to sinusoid, sinusoid to hepatic veins to IVC. This is how the blood flows in our body. So the connection between the bowel loops and the liver is basically enterohepatic circulation. So when there is pneumatosis intestinalis, the air escapes into the enterohepatic circulation, which gets transmitted to the portal vein, and via the portal vein, the hepatic sinusoids, capillaries to the hepatic veins. So blood is flowing distally from the porta hepatis to the periphery. So whenever you're seeing presence of air in the portal vein, you will see that air is reaching till the periphery of the liver. Similarly, if they ask you what is the difference between a biliary gas, that is pneumobilia, versus a portal venous gas, bile flows from the liver cells to the biliary system which is present in the, the CBD which is present in the porta hepatis, right? So it is moving from periphery to center. So if it is a biliary gas, that is pneumobilia, you will see presence of air predominantly in the center, not in the periphery. If you're looking air in the periphery, most likely you're dealing with a portal venous gas. So presence of pneumatosis intestinalis with a portal venous gas is most commonly seen in venous. It is seen also in an arterial as well as non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia, but however it is slightly rare in non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia. Now that we have understood even the imaging features, now we should know how are we supposed to treat this patient. So, if you're looking at a thrombus or an emboli in the superior mesenteric artery, go ahead, do either a balloon angioplasty if the patient has reached very early, hook the superior mesenteric artery or the artery where there is thrombus or an emboli, and you can even inject intra-arterial streptokinase and you can come out. If you're dealing with a venous thrombus, always give an oral anticoagulant, most likely that the thrombus will resolve on its own. Now, how do we deal with non-occlusive mesenteric ischemia? There is no thrombus at all, right? So what do we do is, we hook the superior mesenteric artery, take a run, you'll see that superior mesenteric artery is extremely narrowed down, giving a string of beads appearance, right? And then you can inject papaverine, which is a significant vasodilator, and the blood flows back and then the bowel loops come back to the normal stage. But there is a huge problem with this, that is, the patient is already in hypoperfusion. That is why the body uses this mechanism to redirect the blood to save the heart and the brain, right? Now, if you're pulling all the blood back to the bowel, there is chance of ischemia elsewhere in the body and create huge bigger problems. So, in such a case scenario, always before you plan on injecting piperine, see to it that the fluid status of the patient is normal, patient is no more in shock, he's managed, his ABCs are normal, and then take the patient for a DSA. Right, so as we already discussed, the complication if you give papaverine could be sudden hypotension, so you need to manage accordingly. Right, now that we've discussed everything about ischemic bowel disease, now we are left with one basic question, that is, to diagnose ischemic bowel disease as a radiologist, what are the sequences you need to acquire? How do you acquire a CT scan? You need to acquire a dual phase CT scan with an arterial phase and a venous phase. Arterial phase, I mean to say, it should be an early arterial phase to look for any thrombus or emboli in the superior mesenteric artery, right? So, this is the end of the topic of acute mesenteric ischemia. Now we look at chronic mesenteric ischemia. Chronic mesenteric ischemia is quite a small topic. So, whenever you are talking about chronic mesenteric ischemia, the etiology has to be either atherosclerosis or a vasculitis. And the clinical features of chronic mesenteric ischemia will be something called as cetophobia. What is cetophobia? Is fear of eating food, because whenever he is going to eat food, there is work to the bowel, and hence there will be increased blood supply to the bowel, which in a chronic mesenteric ischemia, because the vessels are thrombosed, they're atherosclerotic, it might not be able to meet the demand of the bowel. That is why the patient will experience so much of pain in the abdomen. So this is called as fear of eating food, that is cetophobia. Coming to the imaging features, when do you call a chronic mesenteric ischemia? When there is partial or complete occlusion of 2 out of the 3 vessels. Which are the 3 vessels I'm talking about? That is the celiac artery, superior mesenteric artery, as well as the inferior mesenteric artery. So, along with it, you will see multiple collaterals because it is a chronic state, right? Collaterals would have developed. Now, it is important to know that which collaterals are important. If you are looking at a celiac artery sclerosis, then the collaterals are formed from superior mesenteric or the inferior mesenteric, right? So, for a celiac, they form from the superior mesenteric artery, that is, they form a pancreatic collaterals. How are they being formed? We look at this example. So, I've already told you that gastroduodenal artery gives off a branch that is superior pancreatic artery. And the first branch of superior mesenteric artery is inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery. This superior pancreaticoduodenal artery and inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery will form a cascade around the pancreas, via which the blood flows from the superior mesenteric artery to the branches of celiac artery, right? Now, the next thing is, if there is a atherosclerotic plaque or vasculitis along the superior mesenteric artery or the inferior mesenteric artery, then what does it happen? There is a communication between the superior mesenteric and inferior mesenteric artery. If the communication is proximal, we call it an arc of Riolan. To be very frank, it is a communication between the middle colic artery and the left colic artery, but however, it's a proximal communication. Very important. This is a repeated spotter. They'll show you a DSA run or they'll show you a CT MIP image like this, and they'll ask you, what is this artery named as, or what is this collateral named as? You have to tell it is arc of Riolan, which is formed because of either a superior mesenteric artery or an inferior mesenteric artery atherosclerotic plaque or a vasculitis, which is causing the narrowing of these arteries, right? If there is a distal communication between the superior and inferior mesenteric artery, then we call it marginal artery of Drummond, which you can see even in the CT image that this is marginal artery of Drummond. Now, if you answered all of this, some people ask you a trick question, that what is arc of Buller? This arc of Buller is a congenital anatomical variation which is normally present in few of the patients between the celiac artery and the superior mesenteric artery. It is not a collateral, it is just a normal congenital variant which is seen in some of the patients, right? Now, How do we treat a chronic mesenteric ischemia? I think we know that it is treated via balloon angioplasty with stenting. So, now that we have understood about the chronic as well as the acute mesenteric ischemia, we come to an end of this topic of ischemic bowel disease. So, guys, if you guys like the way of our teaching, the simplified versions, the efforts we are putting in to make each topic simplified to make you guys understand, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please wait till the next week for the next amazing, exciting content. Thank you.
Hey guys, if you like our simplified approach to difficult conceptual topics, please do comment, like, share, and subscribe to our channel.